Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Able Leadership Series interview. And today I am absolutely delighted to be joined with Anca Pintilie, who is a marketing expert. I'll call you Anca. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Excellent. So Anca builds marketing functions, rating models, and various other bits and pieces, and has worked around the tech world for your whole career, basically. So you were last 6 years at Amazon, and you were leading marketing and brand across EMEA. You scaled a team sixfold. You managed a portfolio of over 1,000 campaigns, and you oversaw an enormous budget in hundreds of millions. And you also kind of ran a kind of global transformation mandate, if that's correct. And then before that, you were at Revolut, Oracle, and various agency roles. So look, we're delighted to have you here. The thing that I'm most interested about the bio that you sent me before this was that you trained as an economist. That's interesting in itself, but you also competed as a mathematics Olympian, which I had never heard of before. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Thank you. It's a long time ago, which of course it's going to age me by saying this, but this was in school basically. And mathematics was one of my favorite subjects. Well, my favorite subject, because you had, there was an exploratory journey to mathematics, but there was also some sort of certainty at the end of that journey. It was a bit binary. You either cracked it or you didn't crack it. So quite simple, as opposed to other subjects where you had to write 3 pages to describe a character or something. I'm not going to say what that is, but everybody knows what that means. No wonder now we write very long articles describing certain things all over LinkedIn. So there you go. It comes from school. Nobody's fault. So that's what it was. It's basically you are competing against your schoolmates, then you compete at county level, then at country level. And I thought I was absolutely awesome until I hit a certain level and I was basically at the bottom of the list. So clearly that wasn't going to be necessarily a long-term career. It's also a school isolated thing that you do. And I wanted to actually go to the University of Mathematics. And my whole family was like, and you're going to be a teacher? Because, I'm sorry, many, many years ago, we really didn't have a big vision of where mathematics can take you, right? As opposed to today where, things are a little bit different. So I went to the next best thing, and actually I'm very happy with it. An economist, where you do use a lot of logic. It's just, you look at markets rather than maybe pure equations.
I don't know what your school or your education was like, but I was also a bit of a maths geek at school. I don't think it was properly explained to me back then, or maybe I just didn't realise or forgot that maths is actually the building block of the world. So I was in a stage now where one of my daughters is moving from primary school up to secondary school. And so we went to visit a potential new secondary school with her last week. And one of the teachers that was showing us around was an English teacher. And Maya was saying, I don't really like English. I prefer maths. He was like trying to argue the point about English. And I said to him, well, numbers are the building blocks of the world. You need that. You don't need English. And he reluctantly agreed.
Probably not the first time he had that conversation, though.
Well, indeed. And I'm not dismissing the importance of English language or literature, both very important to people in this country. So look, as I said, delighted to have you here. Obviously here at Able, we're really interested in AI adoption, and that's our whole brand. So I'd love to know from your time running marketing ops, what is the first thing you check to know if a team is ready for AI, rather than just to go out and buy it?
It's actually quite simple. Are they able to describe how work actually happens within their function? And by that means is, how do you make decisions? Which one of those decisions triggers spend, for example? Or what data are you using? Where is it coming from? Does it have the same, refresh rate? And that sounds fancy, but let me tell you this. When I joined my team, and this is nobody's fault, we just were not set up, in that way at the beginning, and then we all together fixed it. We pulled data from 3 different sources, and those was self-reported data by different vendors and partners that were working with us, and everybody was reporting at a different time of the week. So basically do you take the right decisions at the right time? And what is the process that actually supports the whole decision-making chain within your function? And is everything connected to a business outcome? Or you're seeing the marketing brief coming in, that connection maybe with the business is a little bit loose, or it's been defined 7 years ago, right? Maybe pre-pandemic levels. because somebody said, well, when this happens, then we're going to do marketing. And maybe nobody challenged it in the past few years. So this is important. And the way work happens never sits in an org chart, because nowadays, we reorg every other day. So any org chart is basically obsolete by the time everybody occupies their new roles. So that's just basically something that it's almost like one of those things, you have to have it, but actually it's never a reflection of the truth. And it's absolutely your operating model, unless you've mapped it out in the past month, it's probably also obsolete, right? Or somebody wrote it on a slide just to present it to management. So basically, can you describe how work happens with accuracy? And that is basically the readiness test. Because buying AI is the easiest thing. And nowadays, building AI is quite easy, right? If you want to build some AI workflows. But if you're not careful, you're going to automate whatever dysfunction you have within your function. And this reminds me of one of those tests. I mean, it was happening all over Instagram and TikTok a few years ago, where somebody was going to this person and said, can I see what's in your bag? And they would just start pulling all these random objects, basically, sometimes
Yeah, I
something
remember
you
this
haven't
trend.
cleaned from like 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, it's exactly like this. Like, somebody opens your bag today and it's going to say, and here it's going to be on a world stage. Now everybody's going to see it. It's the same thing, but with AI and basically businesses. Yeah.
I mean, we find this, everyone says the same thing, and it's something that we harp on about a lot through our channels, that don't just go and buy an AI tool. You really need to figure out what your problem, challenge, opportunity, how you're going to use it is. You need to get the infrastructure and the people lined up first. And lots of businesses really struggle with that. Is that your experience? Did you find that there was a struggle there?
Absolutely. And the bigger the business, the more complex, probably the bigger the struggle, right? Because if you had generous budgets in the past with very, very ambitious targets, then most likely your operational model is all over the place, because you had to move fast, and you needed to execute. You needed to go to market quite quickly. And the way you do this is by running an in-depth discovery, which, many years ago, I think I would have said, just, get on with it, do the discovery. It's going to take a month. And then, let's just get to the execution, or let's get to the implementation of our solutions. But I was surprised, like when I started in my previous role, working with about 6 marketing teams. And I thought, let's just plan about maximum 2 months of discovery across all of these teams. Took us 5 to 6 months, my team, to actually get to the bottom of the truth. And the questions are the easy part. It's not that complicated. What you can ask is how you actually end up getting to the truth. What that means is, and when I say the questions is, what decisions do you make, for example, before you actually get a sign off on specific budget or a specific campaign or specific whatever, execution? What knowledge exists within this realm of yours, within this function, that maybe only John and Alex remember it? And why do they remember it? Where is this codified? Where is this documented? Can it be replicated? When one of them goes on leave, do we actually post certain things? Another interesting thing is you need to figure out exactly what metric changes behavior and which one just gets reported. And again, big companies, big functions, big budgets, I used to call this the reporting festival, because you had your reporting on Monday, and then you had the creative review on Tuesday, and then you have whatever. So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
this is like 3-4 day festival every day, where you have this, stage time where you just end up discussing metrics. But which one of them actually drives a change of mind or a decision? For example, your click-through rate is going to get reported, but what's going to change your budget discussion is actually incrementality. Do you measure that? If you don't, just own up to the fact that you don't measure. I had reports in my function where we went in with things where you had these black boxes and said, if we would be able to measure this, here's what the conclusion of the bottom would be. Here are the decisions that we could make if we measure this. And here are the dependencies on why we can't measure today. And actually, dear management sitting here on the call, can you please help us unblock this? Because if you want to get to this conclusion or to this decision that's going to impact budget moving forward, and even, revenue or whatever else we're targeting, then we need you to do this. And sometimes it's actually good to put that into going back to equation, into an equation, even though, you have the variables which you don't know yet, but it gives people, look, this is exactly where you're going to get. Another question that I love is actually which activities nowadays the team is doing or survived, let's say, because they're measurable, but they're no longer valuable. And you're going to figure out that there's a lot of those. Like, for example, we had a crisis at some point, we had an extra approval step, and now we've been dragging that approval step with us for like a year, which is probably half an hour extra a week for everything, right? Half an hour that you could be using to something else. Or it's one of my favorites is the brand trackers. Okay, great. Which most of the times are flawed and they never actually influence decision, but they satisfy a lot of curiosity. And this is not me advocating against brand trackers. Is, are you doing it across the territories that are actually the most painful for you, or the things that actually are going to influence the decision, or we just want to satisfy everyone's curiosity about our brand across most territories, and then we do this thin layer of measurement, which probably won't be able to be, fully complete at any point. Another thing is, again, going back to the reporting festivals, and you said I measured a lot of campaigns, is how many KPIs are we measuring against across all of these campaigns, and how many of them actually drive decisions. Anyway, these are a few questions that you do, and how to get to the bottom of it, you need to spend a lot of times with those teams. You need to either fly over, go in a room, put it on a whiteboard. My team and I, across 6 teams, we ended up with about 72 calls and really didn't get to the bottom of it until we just flew over and we said, okay, everybody, can you just sit in one room? And we're going to draw it out on a whiteboard. And when people see it in that analog world of seeing it on a whiteboard, actually they start realizing what they're doing every day.
I mean, there's so many things there that I wanted to come back on you. I mean, firstly, the reporting festival. I think we've all been there, right? When we work for businesses and you spend your entire life just reporting rather than actually doing any work. I do think that one of the benefits of even the most simple use cases of AI is to automate all of that now. And so really people shouldn't be spending days producing PowerPoint decks to present to other people in their team. Those days should, in theory, be gone. The amount of time, though, that you've mentioned there, I think you said 5 to 6 months. I think there's going to be some people who are listening to this and going, Christ, I haven't got 5 to 6 months to figure this stuff out. But what that makes me think of is something that you approach in life. Generally, you need to invest a big piece of time at the start to plan it out properly in order for it to be effective, whether it's a project or whatever it might be. And that forms part of that. So if you don't do that first step properly, then the outputs you can expect to get from adopting an AI tool, process, agentic workflow, whatever it might be, are not going to be as good. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I felt it on my own, basically. I felt what it means to just go and say, you know what, this tool works in North America. We're just going to deploy it in Mexico. Great. The Mexico team was like, we have a completely different mix of channels. We take decisions differently. Our data is all over the place. No, that doesn't work. But guess what? You've invested a lot of hours. Either you bought it or you built it. So, now it's not fit for purpose. And what happens is when you actually deploy the wrong tool, not only that you can automate that dysfunction and just to show, you all of a sudden your unwanted processes or whatever, unwanted decisions are all over, but the team starts building ghost processes to actually manage the inappropriate tool that you just brought in. So it becomes even messier. 7 months ago in December, I spoke at a conference that was more of a tech summit. Everybody talked about AI. We had PhD people, joining with PhDs in AI now. And, it was a fantastic conversation about the technical aspects of AI in marketing. About a month ago, I met with a similar crowd and everybody was talking about operational models because guess what? Whatever you bought 6, 7 months ago without inspecting how you actually solve for the business, now it's a bigger mess and nobody actually understands. Now you have the legacy operational model, some AI plugged into it and then ghost process on top and everybody's miserable. I'm exaggerating and dramatizing, but it's not always like this, but it can be like this as well. And people now go back to the basics and all of this 7 months, which now seem like a long time. You're like, I'm spending 5 months. Yes. But guess what? At the end of those 5 months, you might realize that for a chunk of your business, all you need is a simple deterministic model. Because once you get in AI costs money, but also managing AI it means you're managing sophistication, which is a completely different game. Maybe all you need is to clean up your brief sometimes. Maybe you don't need a full-blown AI workflow to tell you that your compliance and governance things, some of them could be embedded within a brief and they can be a fixed part of your brief. And that maybe solves a lot of things downstream. And you don't need AI for that.
I don't actually think that you're exaggerating this point. And there's 2 reasons why I say that. Firstly, the conversations that we have with people, and exactly what you said is resonating across different businesses. I mean, obviously Amazon is a hyper huge business. But even businesses at the smaller end of our spectrum, which you'd consider to be SMEs, are facing similar challenges. The other thing is that there is so much research out there about how much ROI people are getting from their AI spend. And AI adoption levels have skyrocketed this year, as you would expect. But the ROI is still quite small for the vast majority of businesses because of the reasons that you've just pointed out. People haven't done it properly. They haven't rolled it out properly. They haven't thought about it properly. And as a result, they're kind of going, well, we've got this brand new, shiny new tool and we're spending hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, whatever it might be on it. And yet we're not seeing any ROI out. Well, hold on. Have you actually embedded it properly? And then the kind of the other part of that is, have you adopted it correctly in your organization? This comes me on to another point, and that's more the human angle. So you were talking about the questions that you're asking the team to help identify their working processes and their challenges and the problems they want to solve using new shiny AI tools. There's an element of digging into the honesty of the responses that you get from those people. I imagine trust is so important in every part of business. And as you go into larger and bigger organizations, I imagine that becomes more diluted because just the nature of having thousands of people in business. So how do you really get to the bottom of it? And then linked to that, how do you ensure that these people are being given the support from a training and development perspective that they need in order to use the tools properly? So it's that human element that I always keep coming back to when AI is involved. I've ended up waffling a little bit now, but does that make sense to you?
It does. And I'll start answering and you tell me if we're on the right track here. But when you do that discovery, basically, if you do not surface any contradictions and everybody's reciting from the same slide, then that's your problem. That's the signal. It means you need to go deeper because complexity pays salaries. And it's normal. Like somebody that ran a process, for example, for like 5 years, now they're going to be attached to it. They might have a love-hate relationship with the process because, it's always like, yeah, but they've improved upon it. Then maybe they got a promotion out of something, so you need to get to the bottom to understand, why are you doing this? Is it actually relevant? And that means it's not because anyone has any sort of ill intent in this. It's because we do work in this, constant hamster wheel sometimes. And you're like, okay, once you ask people to stop and think, need to give them the space. There needs to be a safe space. And there need to be many stages to this. Getting on a call and say, tell me how you go to market, how do you plan your budget? It just gives you a little bit of an idea if you need, it just warms them up to the process and makes you understand a little bit more about the person that's in front of you. But then you're probably going to have 2-3 more conversations. And I was talking to a CRO last week, and she was telling me something interesting. She's like, I go into these companies and I look at their goals, and they're like, oh, we need growth. And then I go to all the other functions and I look at their budgets and their headcount and how they're actually, if that's growth, then why are we spending 60% on, I don't know, something else rather than growth, right? What is your budget leaning in the other direction? So it's those things like, do you see contradictions in what people say, what they do, the tools that they have at their disposal, their understanding of the data? Once you have that in, it's a little bit different. And adoption is an interesting thing because we need to think about adoption versus usage in AI, right? Sometimes you have the usage, but you don't have adoption. And that's why I love when you say embedding. Embedding means you don't work around your technology. It's not another part of your day or of your stack. It's how do you change the way you make decisions now that you have technology? As most teams now, they bring in a tool and it's almost like they rebuild processes around that technology. They behave like they used to behave before they had it. So actually, you start with change management way before you bring the tool. And that's not training people how to use the tool. Is actually understanding, you don't even need to name the tool. I'm just going to tell the team, hey, look, 3 months from now, here's what you're going to get within your system as an input into your system right now. Here's your operational model. The new input is going to be that, you can automate this, you can do this, you can do the other thing. Now, seeing these things, how do you actually change the way you behave? Where do you have your approval process, plugged in? Do you have humans everywhere? Do you have humans, at the beginning, at the end? So we need to think about the logic before you even train folks on the tool. And I know all these things because we made all of these mistakes, basically. We had the tool, we came in, I said, let's train everyone. And then 3 months in, I was like, why are they not using it? It's because the inertia plays a big role here. It's because people are going to go back to what they know because that's a faster path to success, even if that success is, flawed or the data's not that doesn't matter. It's something.
Changing human behavior is one of the hardest things to do. It really is. Even if they like my experience, people can be very receptive to change, and yet when you're asking them to change the way they act, the way they work, whatever it is, it's just so hard for people. We're creatures of habit.
We are. And again, it depends. Have you been rewarded for that behavior in the past? Cool. Then that's going to be, your default behavior. So it's tough, but again, it's always what I usually say is this: technology is your decision number three. First, you map your operational model, then you start your change management, and which means is how am I gonna behave differently? What are the things that I need to say goodbye to? There's a mourning period sometimes, people are like, no,
Morning
why are we
period.
breaking this apart now? And especially sometimes you just give up. You just completely deprecate certain processes that they've done or certain decisions that that the teams were taking. And you don't replace them with anything because they never needed them. But that's basically, do not underestimate the sadness that comes with some of those things. And why do we need to map processes? In my previous role, I worked across 6 marketing teams. They had about maybe 300, 400 people, a lot of processes. They were going to market in similar markets, sometimes overlapping. And when we mapped out the processes of these 6, the operational model of these 6 teams, we found out they had about 13 of them. And nobody knew, nobody even, then again, these are talented, high-performing people. So nobody here is, they could have just paid more attention. Now, sometimes these operating models were driven by the conversations they were having with the business. Quality versus quantity. I don't know, performance versus, something else, versus growth or new acquisition versus loyalty and retention. So all of these things, and then the machine was operating, the marketing machine in the background was operating differently. But your machine doesn't have to be different. You just point it at the different goal. You don't have to build the whole decision chain downstream in a completely different way. So these are some of the things that we discovered. And when I say the change management starts, means part of that is codifying your decisions. Like if John goes away tomorrow, do we know how he's taking decisions and actually producing a lot of value for our business or not? Or maybe we need to wait for him to come back and then, maybe figure out how we're successful again. Yeah, this is, these are some of the things about discovery. And I know it takes a long time, but actually it's an exciting piece of work as well.
Yeah, I think so. I do. And I don't think we can underplay the importance of it, which is what we've been talking about for the past 20 minutes. I'm going to change tack slightly here. I'm going to reference something that you posted on LinkedIn a couple of months ago. You said that you didn't believe in permanent roles, that you believe in being paid to change something and knowing when that work is done. At the time, I believe you were talking about that in the context of marketing leadership or leadership in general. But do you think that holds true for AI projects as well, where someone often needs to stay close to the system long after launch?
Absolutely. I think it holds for AI as well, because a mandate has milestones and a definition of what done means at every stage. And those you usually define at the start. Now, things can change and you revise, throughout your project. But at some point, a senior role basically starts hitting diminishing returns against a specific mandate. So to pay senior transformation rates, for example, to keep running a system that's already stable and it just needs maintenance, it's basically the wrong spend for the business. And when I say to pay, that doesn't mean consultancy or advisory roles. It can mean permanent roles or can mean roles within the company, right? But a mandate is, if I'm done here as a senior person, then use me for something else. Let's build together our next challenge. Or maybe I've already identified a new challenge and I'm, building it together with management and I'm pitching it. So basically, whenever you build a mandate, you need to have an exit path from day one, which that goalpost will change. Things will be a little bit more flexible, but it's about how you actually have in mind certain milestones to say, okay, am I hitting it? Am I not? Am I extending it by 3 months? And for an A project, the launch is not the done part, basically, which sometimes it happens, especially across technical teams who are measured against launch and deployment. Launch could be the middle, right? So it depends where done is for you. Done is when the operating model, for example, has absorbed the system and it just runs a proper, defined role. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to agree with that. I think that there's a variety of different ways you can approach these things. And generally people need to figure it out for themselves. And often the best way to figure this stuff out is to try it and mess it up and learn from your mistakes and then try again. So, you've also said recently that marketing problems are rarely about marketing. So when a marketing team is struggling to get value from AI. What do you think is the real problem that sits underneath that?
Well, when the team can't get value from AI, the AI is almost never the thing that's broken, basically. AI needs a clear question, a business question that asked against some data that everyone agrees on to a standard that somebody owns, then it comes up with a solution, right? So can you, as a marketing team, for example, can you give any of these three or all of these three, right? Do you have your clear question that you're pointing this whole AI at? Is everyone agreeing on the data and the story that tells? And do you agree on the standards of delivery as well? So I would say if you go back to this, you go back to this workflows, this is where the question is. And I'm going to go back to my example with the 6 teams, right? And then the 13 parallel workflows is we had a multitude of versions of what good looked like. We didn't really have an agreement on what the question is. And if you point AI at any of this, basically, then the decision is going to be that this doesn't work. An example on the data, we had about 68 external vendors feeding data globally on one part of our business, on one part of our globe. And there was no single measurement framework across all of them. And, you kind of had that spend, you had different reads against all of this. And yeah, it's a problem, exactly, because AI is not broken. AI is just amplifying whatever you have internally as a definition of success.
It comes back to what we were talking about at the start, doesn't it? You need to define what you're trying to do first, then roll out the tool, and then you've got measurable metrics and ROI that you can go up against and try. Same way you would with anything in life, or
Yeah.
certainly in business. I imagine that when you were in your role at Amazon, you got pitched by a multitude of AI vendors, probably thousands of times a day. I read something recently. There's about apparently 300 new AI vendors with solutions on the market globally every single day, to give you the kind of the scale of the change that's going through. What advice would you give to a marketing leader or any leader in business about how to sort the wheat from the chaff, like how to understand what a potential solution can do for the business, and what kind of claims kind of make you cautious when you're hearing them from new AI solution providers?
I mean, there's loads. One claim that makes me super cautious is any claim that sounds like it's just an intelligence layer on top of your current system. So minimizing the impact of AI, again, that can automate dysfunction, can pull, can just automatically amplify a lot of things that you have within your process. When you minimize that impact, for me, this is where I don't want to engage at all. Now, if you're pitching headcount savings, time savings, that's okay. It's just it's opening discussion, and then you're probably going to wait for me to come with like the real challenges that I have, and we can just put a number behind this. But it's if the vendor doesn't go back to understanding our operating model, or doesn't actually inspect if we understand ourselves, our operating model, this is where I can become cautious. You're just trying to just sell me something that's going to sit on top of, that's a little bit, that's where I become really cautious.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we all get pitched hundreds of times a day, and most of them I ignore. So I think if you're a vendor and you're trying to cut through, you need to do your homework the same way that you would have to with any kind of sales, in my opinion. Right, well, unfortunately, we're nearly out of time. This has been an incredibly enjoyable conversation so far, and I always try and finish with the same question, and that is, so our audience is people in scale-up and mid-market organizations, business leaders, right, across a range of different functions. What would your single piece of advice be for those individuals about how to adopt AI in the next couple of months?
I mean, it's the same. I'm going to go back to the same thing. Understand your operational model. Don't spend 6 months on it. You're fine, right? It's go back in, go in a room, be super honest about what you're doing, map it out, and then you're going to figure out what you can do faster. What is it? Do you want to do it faster? Do you want to replicate certain decisions? Do you want to what are the goals basically of that AI? What exactly do you want to do? It's easy to start with time savings and automate whatever can be automated. Sometimes it's okay to go in stages as well. You don't have to do it all at once. And even if you bring some sort of tool inside your business, that's okay. Like you can just say, I'm going to activate a bunch of features. I don't want to put that pressure. But go back to the basics of your operating model. If you have metrics that you report on, whatever metrics you report on needs to be managed. So maybe just try to give that away. Try to simplify your reporting, simplify your decision making, simplify all the stages. And when you go back to the basics and say, this is this is the bare bones of what I need to actually produce value for the business. After that, you can take your decisions on AI.
Brilliant. And what I love about this question, because I never prep anyone for it, is everyone always gives me broadly the same answer. So don't buy something before you figured it out, in simple terms.
Yeah.
Been an absolute pleasure to chat to you today, and thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to seeing what you choose to do next in your life. It's going to be very exciting, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
At all.